Thousands of Cubans have died at the hands of terrorism groups working out of the U.S. In 1998, at the request of the FBI, Cuba handed over information about the activities of these groups. But instead of the terrorists being charged, 5 Cuban nationals were arrested in Miami. They were gathering information about terrorism plots against their country. These men were to become known as the Cuban Five.
Our Chief Judge is Justice Yogesh Sabarwal, who is the former Chief Justice of India. We have Justice Zach Yaqub, former member of the Constitutional Court of South Africa, and Justice Philippe Texier, former Justice of the Appeal Court of France.
On the 7th and 8th of March 2014, at the Law Society in London, an international commission of inquiry was called to review the case of the Cuban Five. During 2 days of testimonies, a panel of distinguished judges examined whether the Cuban Five received a fair trial.
The trial in this case had the hallmarks of the kind of unfair trials that they would conduct in South Africa, in old apartheid South Africa, when I used to be a lawyer.
We were aware that this was a very highly charged political case, and right from the outset there had been many concerns about the prejudicial atmosphere in which the trial took place.
The fact that the entire trial was unfair, the fact that the Cuban Five were charged with these particular crimes, that everything, as far as I could tell, was politically motivated.
We had an explosion and we are descending immediately. We had fire on board. Cuban 455, we returning to the field. Cuban 455, Cuban. Okay, Silver, Cuban 455, we are requesting immediately landing. Cierre la puerta. Eso es peor. Pégate abajo, Freddy, pégate abajo. The time is 1 Secretary USA 50, ¿le podemos ayudar en algo?
En el año 76, el 6 de octubre del 1976, explota en pleno vuelo un avión de Cubana de Aviación. En ese avión iban 73 personas, 57 de ellos cubanos. En ese crimen, en este cruel atentado, pierde la vida mi papá, Luis Alfredo Morales Viego. Yo era una niña, tendría 14 años en aquel momento. Yo no me puedo imaginar cómo murieron aquellas personas encerradas en un avión. No bastaba. Dolió mucho cuando en los años 90, en una entrevista pública que dio Luis Posada Carriles, reconoció que sí, que él había puesto el artefacto y que era necesario poner estas bombas.
Se mencionó en varias oportunidades esta mañana el nombre de algunos terroristas, y estoy pensando particularmente en Luis Posada Carriles. Aparentemente nunca hubo juicio. Yo quisiera saber qué pasó con este señor.
Estados Unidos ni lo ha juzgado por terrorismo, ni lo ha devuelto a Venezuela, sino que lo ha estado protegiendo desde que apareció en ese país, autor intelectual de la voladura de ese avión que causó tanto sufrimiento a esta joven que está acá.
Until 1999, about 3,500 Cubans were killed and 2,100 were seriously injured. And it is mentioned as well that those admitted crimes, such as carried out by Orlando Bosch and Luis Posada Carriles, enjoyed impunity most of the time. And additionally, it has been proved that Cuba sought to resolve the conflict through diplomatic means on several occasions before it moved on to sending its unarmed agents. In my conclusion, I come to the decision that Cuba has a right of self-defense against terrorist attacks emanating from US territory and carried out by exiled Cuban paramilitary groups according in particularly to the UN Charter, Article 51.
In spite of the vigorous objections raised by the Five's defense, the case was tried in Miami, a community with a long history of hostility toward the Cuban government. The Five were convicted on charges ranging from being foreign agents to conspiracy to commit murder, and sentenced to between 15 years and double life term.
Judge Birch wrote that the way Miami was in the late 1990s, early 2000, all the events came together to form a perfect storm where there is no way these five received a fair trial.
Before the trial started, we knew our clients could not get a fair trial in Miami. The prejudice from the population, the pervasive prejudice, there was no way we were going to pick a fair and impartial jury, which is guaranteed to our clients under the Constitution. Ultimately, we even said, Judge, if you move the case 25 miles north to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, that would guarantee our clients a fair trial, and the judge refused.
It was learned later, after the trial, 2-3 years ago, of the vast sums of money spent by the American government to pay journalists who were working for the Miami Herald, CBS, and NBC, who were covering the story.
It was many, many millions of dollars that one journalist, for example, got $276,000. Particular journalists who were paid, and they were writing not acknowledging that they were part of the American government. The total amount of monies we don't know.
The full extent of the way that journalists were in the pay of the US government, which was itself prosecuting the case, has yet to be emerged, but what has come out so far is highly disturbing.
I've been practicing law now for 50 years. I don't think there has ever been a case like this in American history, that there's no reported case since the beginning of the American legal system. We have seen this kind of money pollute a legal system.
Rene Gonzalez became the first of the Cuban Five to be released from jail after serving his full term. He was scheduled to testify in person in London. However, at the final hour, Rene received the news that the British government had denied him a visa to travel to the UK. Despite this further injustice, Rene was able to give his testimony to the commission via Skype.
Am I right in understanding that they did not let you have access all the time, even to the documents they took from you?
El elemento fundamental que yo creo que se utilizó para privarnos en esencia del derecho a la defensa fue la clasificación ilegal masiva de todos los documentos y las condiciones de confinamiento, tanto nuestras como de confinamiento de la evidencia.
There is evidence that was never turned over to this day, as we sit here now, 15 years later. I don't know if there's evidence out there that, as to all the five, that would show their innocence that the government has kept under wraps under the Classified Information Procedures Act. We don't know. And I wouldn't want the government to tell me what evidence I can use and I can't use to defend my client. But that's the way this case worked.
Brothers to the Rescue, a notorious paramilitary group, repeatedly made illegal flights into Cuban airspace. On February 24, 1996, 2 of their airplanes were shot down by Cuban Air Force MiGs. Cuba had notified authorities in the United States of multiple violations of their airspace since May 1994. And had warned on various occasions that they would shoot down unidentified airplanes entering their airspace. 3 years after the shootdown and 7 months after the arrest of the Cuban Five, Gerardo was charged with conspiracy to commit murder.
Gerardo had no ability whatsoever to stop the brothers to the rescue from flying that day. All he knew was that there may be a confrontation. Who advised the Cubans that the planes were taking off? Gerardo did not advise the Cubans that planes were taking off. The U.S. government advised the Cubans that the Brothers to the Rescue planes were taking off. As the Brothers to the Rescue approached the area where the MiGs were and got closer and closer to Cuban airspace, the United States did not launch its own jets, and claims that their radar went down during the 10 minutes that the shootdown takes place. That shootdown is really the heart of the case against the Cuban Five. And because Gerardo is the only one of the five who is sentenced to life imprisonment. He is the crux of this case. The charge against him of conspiracy to commit murder is the heart of this case. It's what drove the emotions. It's what resulted in the heavy sentences against all of the Cuban Five.
The charges with respect to a shootdown come 3.5 years after the shootdown. And so the charges, every aspect of the case, as I said, is polluted by the politics. I find it extraordinarily offensive and unjust. There's no question about the innocence of these people. They had nothing to do with this.
At the present time, Gerardo was serving 2 life sentences. One of the other defendants serving 30 years and another 22. In any other situation, even if there are a conviction, you're talking about 2, 3, 4, 5 years at the most. And in this particular case, there was a finding that the allegations of conspiracy to espionage, there was nothing that any of the Cuban Five gave that you could not find from the daily newspaper or the then things that existed like Wikipedia. There was nothing secret at all. So that the whole question of sentencing, the question of the jury selection, the question of arresting these people, it's event after event after event, which is both unparalleled and, again, given the politics of that time, not surprising.
El haberlos encarcelado, el haberlos condenado a estas largas penas, como es el hecho de que Gerardo pueda morir en prisión por su condena de perpetuidad, no ha sido suficiente para las autoridades de Estados Unidos. Se ha llevado ese odio hacia los familiares que hemos sido víctimas de toda esa agresión, de toda esa hostilidad, impidiéndonos en el caso nuestro las visas para visitar a Gerardo en prisión, impidiéndonos también nuestro derecho a la maternidad y paternidad, porque la lejanía y la distancia establecida por la cárcel nos impide tener fruto de nuestro amor un hijo.
Clever as we think humanity is, we haven't found a way to give years back to people in their lives, and we won't. So what's required now, if we care at all about it, is immediate resolution. No more injury. Release them and do what you can to straighten out the record.
The commission heard evidence from the lawyers, from the families, from Mr. Rene Gonzalez, and a whole range of other people connected with how the families had suffered. They made a full disclosure of what people did. We had a full description of the trial, and ultimately had to make some kind of statement in connection with the proceedings that had occurred. We have urged the President, for a number of reasons, the President of the United States of America, Barack Obama, to pardon everyone, all 5, and to release immediately and unconditionally the other 3.